Winter time on the allotment is always a quiet time. There's hardly anybody around. Most people have packed up their sheds and like grizzly bears, they've gone off and hibernate for the winter. We won't see them again till spring. But winter time can actually be one of the most productive times on the plot to get lots and lots of tasks done. So today I'm going to go through the 20 jobs that I'll be getting done over the winter time. That way, when spring comes, I'll be ready for the season, and unlike all those people that have been absent all year, I'll be a happy bear rather than a grizzly bear. While there's no crops in the beds, it's an ideal time to actually top up the paintwork on your raised beds. Get some more preservative on the shed, so it's looking nice and coated for the new year. And on our plain wood beds, they'll benefit and love a little bit of a treatment with some teak oil. So we'll be doing our raised beds, preserving them, painting the shed, and giving these beds a top up of teak oil. It's also an ideal opportunity to do any of those repairs that you need, either to sheds. Here we've got a little bit of a problem where the wood's come out. Down at the other end of the bed, we've got one of the bed ends has rotted out. So while there's no plants or the rhubarb's all down here, it's an ideal opportunity to get all those bed repairs done. And also, if you need to, put in some new beds. So last year, we did a video where we were pruning this apple tree to turn it into a nice goblet sort of shape. So again, this year, we'll just be putting a few little cuts in there just to keep the shape and things. There's a few places down here where there's branches crossing over with each other, and we just need to open up the inside. And winter time is the ideal time to be pruning trees. Winter is also the ideal time to be planting new bare root raspberry canes or blackberries or new trees or anything else. Get them in the ground now, and come spring they'll shoot off. We'll be looking to get some of our blackberry cuttings that we actually took earlier in the year in the ground, so come next season they'll be off to a good start and ready for the new season. So get those bare root trees and all the other canes and everything else you want on order. Get them in the ground. Here in the polytunnel, we've had a really good season, but as you can see, the covers are completely messed up now. So we'll be getting some Algon, or you can just use soapy water, and we'll be giving all the greenhouse, the polytunnel, and if you've got a greenhouse, same on that, give them all a good clean off, stop any build up of actually pests or diseases and fungi on them. And then also it will mean that once you've got a nice clean sheets, you'll get that maximum light transmission into your greenhouses and polytunnels come the spring, which is when the plants really need it. In the spring, still low hours of light, so as much light as you can get in as possible, all the better. So we'll be cleaning off all of this polytunnel and everything else with some nice Algon, just to get a nice clean sheet ready for the spring. If you haven't got your beds topped up by now, now's the time to do it. If you're a no-dig gardener, just layer on your mulch and your compost on top. If you prefer to dig, get in there, fork it all over, so that you get all the lumps up to the surface. The cold and the frost will break those down, and then leave it until the spring. The worms and everything else will make your life easier because they'll do the hard work for you. So make sure before you go off for winter, you've got your beds composted or dug over if you do prefer to dig. That way, when you come to the spring, you're not digging and disturbing the soil. And by that point, all the organic matter and all the life in the soil will actually be nice and stable. The last thing you want to be doing is digging over and disturbing the soil just before you're planting, because at that point you're messing up all the balance and the organic matter and the life in your soil and it will take a few weeks, several weeks for that to actually re-establish itself. So get it done now and you'll thank yourself in spring. Although you may not be growing anything over winter, the weeds will still be establishing themselves. So it's a good idea, grab your little hoe and just lightly hoe over the surface. Once every 1 or 2 weeks, just give it a little bit. It's a bit firm today, but when it's nice and soft, we'll just be hoeing over the surface of all the beds that we haven't got anything growing in, to make sure that come the spring, we've not got a bed full of weeds and we've got to spend all our time weeding. So whenever you get a chance, just run the hoe lightly over the surface just to knock out any of those weeds that's trying to establish themselves over winter. Winters are getting wetter, summers are getting drier. It's a case of global warming and it's something we've just got to live with. So I've just finished installing a second water butt next to the original one on our shed. We'll also be putting some guttering onto our new polytunnel on our new plot, and on the polytunnel down the back there, where we haven't going to have the side rails, we're using a slightly different method to get some guttering onto there. The advantage is that if you have an allotment that doesn't have running water, obviously you need to save as much water as possible. And even if you do have an allotment where you have got access to a tap or water troughs, natural rainwater is so much better for your plants than actually tap water that's got lots of other chlorine and other chemicals in there. And also it's going to save you so much time. Come when you need to do your watering's on your plot. You don't have to run all the way down to the tap and ferry buckets and watering cans full of water all the way from the tap back down to your plot. So get yourself as much water capture equipment. It could be as simple as just using an old dustbin, just to capture some water, get it onto your plot, and you come the spring and the summer when it's really, really dry, you'll have plenty of water to keep your plants nice and moist and help with their growing. During the winter, it's an ideal time to get your structures in place. Things like these beam frames we made up last year, all the new hoop covers that we're putting in this year. So we've got another 3 beds there that we need to get our hoop covers on, and we'll just put the actual framing on. We won't need to put any covers on yet, but come when we actually do need to actually cover those things up, we'll have all the frames in place. So beam canes, anything else that you want to put up, and new structures that you want to put in, ideal opportunity to do it. Saves you time now. You've got plenty of time now while you're not planting, and these structures will stay in place, and then when you're ready you can just cover them up. Now's the time to be getting out all your covers, give them a good clean off, give them a wash if they need it, hang them up somewhere to dry, and then fold them up nice and neat and pack them away. Now I'd advise that once you've packed them or dried them, packed them and folded them up, maybe take them home, put them in your garage, put them in a spare room instead of leaving them in your shed or in your greenhouse. Trust me, I know from my own mistakes, I've left covers like this in my shed over winter only to come back to find that the mice have made a nice little home in them and the covers are actually full of holes. So get your covers, get them all cleaned off, get them dried, get them folded up, and then come the spring, all you've got to do, take it off the shelf at home, bring it down to the allotments, get your beds covered, and you'll be sure that you haven't got any mice holes. And you go at the same time when you're doing them, give them a quick inspect, see if there's any repairs you need to do. Very often you have small holes or tears in these, you can very often just repair those with a little bit of cord or just sew them round. So get your covers sorted now and get them stored away somewhere safe where those pesky vermin can't get hold of them. Now we're quite lucky on our plot. The local council very often are delivering bark chippings. Winter time is a time when loads and loads of tree lopping and tree tidying up is going on. So if your council doesn't deliver this and you're a council allotment holder, phone them up, see if they'll be willing to dump a load of wood chips on your plots for you. If not, have a word with your local tree surgeons. sometimes they are more than happy to get rid of the wood chippings. If they're not using them for something else, they very often have to pay for the disposal of these chippings. So for you phone up and asking around a few tree surgeons, say, would you mind dropping some of these off down on my plot? Sometimes they're more than happy to do that. So ideal opportunity to try and get us hold of wood chippings now when there's loads of tree cutting down and shredding going on. So we'll be grabbing as much bark as we can just to refresh all our pathways and everything else on the plot. So come this spring, we've got nice pathways and we haven't got that job to do. Now, if you're not into bark paths, get out your edging tool, get your grass paths with a nice clean edge, and therefore it looks great and it'll stop that grass growing into your beds and causing you issues in the springtime. So get your bark, you've got bark paths, and get them refreshed. How about considering putting some power into your allotment? We've got this small solar panel, and inside it goes to a solar controller and a 12-volt car battery. Now that gives us 12-volt power on the site, which we use from everything from powering wildlife cameras to lighting in the shed and the polytunnels to running 12-volt water pumps for when we need to pump water in and out of places. We've also used it for just like powering a hose to go around the plot. So consider that it's a good investment. You can use it for like charging your phones while you're down here, charging other equipment. Get yourself a solar panel, solar controller and a car battery. This year we need to extend this whole setup onto our new plot over here. So we're running a cable across to the new plot and putting in some new switches and some new controllers over there so we can have lighting in the polytunnel, lighting in the greenhouse, some flood lighting on the plot. So on those spring evenings when it's warm but it's still dark in the evenings, you've still got the opportunity to come down here, get a few jobs done, get a little bit of planting doing while it's dark. So consider getting some electrics into your plot. How about getting creative with some pallets? Pallets you can normally get hold of from different places. They're normally advertised on places like Marketplace or Free Cycle, or just if you keep your eye out, you can go around and sort of normally pick these up in different places where you see them. Obviously ask the owner first. But pallets are a great resource for making different stuff. In the past, we've made all our composters out of them. Last year, we made this nice little wooden bench. This year, one of the things that we're going to need is a new potting bench and some shelving and stuff like that for the new polytunnel. So we're getting hold of a few pallets and we'll be making up a new potting bench. So keep tuned for that, and we'll be doing that in a later video. As you can see here, someone else has already had the idea. They're starting to make up their little tables and everything else from some pallet wood. With Christmas just around the corner, we will all be getting lots and lots of packages delivered and everything else. So save that cardboard and get a bin or a bag or something like that and shred that all up, just rip up into pieces that are this sort of size and store it in your bin. Then come the spring, when you've got loads of green waste like grass cuttings and other green waste, you've got some nice brown waste to add to your compost bin. That way you get the ideal balance of green and brown waste, making your compost really great. So save your cardboard and for the new season. Now ideally try and avoid stuff that's got like lots of coloured printing on it, because sometimes that can contain other chemicals. Stick with the sort of brown boxes that your normal standard delivery companies use. Make sure take off all the tape and anything else, so you're just left with a cardboard, and then you've got a nice ready supply ready for the spring. Get all your tools clean. It's ideal time to be getting all the dirt and the muck off your tools. Make sure all your tools, any maintenance needs doing, any fixing your tools that needs doing, just give them a good old clean off. And you can oil them if you want. I've never really found it necessary. Most of the tools nowadays are either galvanised or stainless steel, so they don't need oiling. But if you've got any old tools that need oiling, oil them as well. And also get a sharpening stone, just sharpen up the edge of your spades and other tools, so that come the new season you've got a nice set of new clean tools. And also it means that if you've got any muck and dirt and disease on the tools from last year, you've given them a good clean off. Incidentally, if you do have been subject to any disease or pests or sort of disease from plants and any particular prevalent small pests, make sure you give these a really good clean. Use something like Jay's fluid or something like that to give them a really good clean. You don't want to be transferring last year's diseases into next year's crop. Now, as you can see, our bug house is in bits now. It's not weathered particularly well this year, so we'll be taking the opportunity to make sure that we build some new bug houses. It's beneficial for all the insects and everything else, and also it's kind to nature. So we'll be going through the process of actually building a few more of these, and we'll be putting these around the plot. So watch out for that in future videos. One of the other things you can do is be kind to nature, is maybe install like hedgehog houses or various other bits and pieces. Just be careful that if you've got, like we have on this site, real problem with rats and mice, that if you're making habitats for larger creatures, you may find that actually instead of actually getting the hedgehog that you wanted, you're actually getting something that's less wanted. So just be careful on that, but try and do as much as you can to enhance the wildlife on your plot. It'll help the ecosystem, and it will also help your crops when you come to want to do germination and everything else in the spring.
When it's too wet and cold to be outside doing stuff on your allotment, get yourself a piece of paper, make a plan of your plot, and then go through and work out what you're going to be growing for next season. Making sure that you can build in succession planning. For instance, on our plot, we've got the onions and garlics in, so when they come out at the beginning of the summer, we're going to need to actually have some other crops available. So it's a great opportunity when you can't get out in the fresh air to make a plan. Now you can draw out a plan on some paper, or you can use one of the online growing services like GrowVeg, which is one of the ones that I use. While you're doing that, once you've got your plan in place, then it's a case of going through all your seeds. I use these little photo boxes to keep all mine in. Go through each one of your seeds, check for the actual sowing dates, and check to see whether the sow by date, make sure that they're still going to be viable for next year. And if they're not going to be, make a list of all the vegetable seeds and crops that you're going to want to grow for the new season, and get them on order now. The worst thing in the world is that you leave it too late and you can't get hold of that favourite variety of broccoli or cabbage that you really, really want. So use the time to plan out your plots, plan out your growing schedule for next year, go through all your seeds, and make sure that you get your seeds on order. Winter time can be a sparse time for actual vegetables and stuff like that. Hopefully that you've grown lots over the season and you may still have in stock, but they're soon going to run out over the winter. So it's a good idea to supplement your diet with some microgreens. Now microgreens really are just the baby shoots of plants. Now you can use anything, you can use specialist sprouting seeds like alfalfa and other varieties, or if you've got some leftover broccoli or other brassica seeds, you can just use those as well. Now what we do is we use these little tiny pots. Now I put like just a small centimetre layer of compost in the bottom of there. Now you could use paper towels or you could use coir. I've always found that actually just a small amount of soil is more than sufficient. So we just put a tiny bit of soil in the bottom of there. We got our big packet of alfalfa sprouts seeds here, and all we're going to do is we're going to sprinkle those all over the base of this thing. Now be generous, because we're not worried about actually planting these things on, we're just going to be growing them for the actual sprouts. So as you can see, it's like we've got a generous portion of seeds in there. And once you've got those in there, obviously if the soil's a bit damp first, that's fine, but just give them a good spray over with some water. Just to get them totally soaked. And then once you've done that, place a little lid over it, then just put it on your windowsill. And that means that you'll have some nice green sprouts. Now we'll be doing this process like every week. We'll be setting a new tray of seeds so that throughout the winter we'll have a lovely ongoing supply of sprouts to actually have with our sandwiches and our other meals. Now this is a set that I sowed. This is a set that I sowed on about 4 or 5 days ago. So as you can see, they're well on their way to actually giving us some nice green sprouts that we can think. What will happen is they'll grow up. When they get to about this height, you'll have a lovely set of green sprouts, and just grab a clump, get your scissors, and just chop them off. And once you've chopped them all off, the rest of the sprouts and this compost, that can just go on your composter. And then you've got another tray to start off. So normally we have like about 3 trays growing. We have one that we're just started. So this one here we just started. We'll have another one that's about a week old and another one that's about 2 weeks old. And that will be the one that we're harvesting. So take the opportunity to get some sprouting greens in. Your body will benefit from it and all the extra nutrients. I have to say that the sprouting, any types of sprouting crops that you do, because of the little baby seasons, they're absolutely packed with nutrients and vitamins, so that they'll be beneficial to you in those cold days when you've not got all the fresh veg that you would normally have from your allotment. So get your sprouting seeds going.
While there's still nettles about, it's ideal time to grab those nettles and make some sort of nettle tea. Now you can make the same principle for comfrey tea as you do for nettle tea. Now, basically what you have to do is grab some old nettles, give them a chop up, just put them into a bucket of water. And then just let that, make sure they're covered with water. You might want to weigh them down in there with something like a small stone or something. The other alternative to actually doing them in buckets like this is what you can do is you can get all the nettles, put them in like a cloth, sort of hessian or nylon sort of bag, and then you can just dip that and leave that in your water butt. And therefore you're growing a nice little water butt full of actually comfrey or nettle tea. Now nettles, full of nitrogen, really good for your greeny crops. Things like brassicas, cucumbers, courgettes. Comfrey, obviously at the moment it's too cold for comfrey because that's all died off for the winter, but in the spring and summer when you're actually getting comfrey, if you do the same principle, make up comfrey tea, that is ideal for your fruiting crops, so things like your tomatoes and your raspberries and everything else. So get yourself a bucket, fill it with a bit of water, chop up some nettles, then you can put the lid on it. One of the reasons for putting a good lid on it is once this stuff is done, it does smell. It does smell pretty bad, but your plants will love it for it. And also, during the winter time, just save yourself a few choice leaves. Get that in your cup, top it up with some hot water, lovely nettle tea. Keep you nice and warm during the winter. So we're just going to chop all these in. We've got some water in this bucket already. Just going to get it stick and give that a prod down, get them all wet, give it a good stir around. And then we'll just top that up with nettles throughout the winter. We'll get a lid on that so it's not stinking the place out. And come the new year, we'll have a lovely bucket full of fertiliser for all our green crops. Right, I'm going to go and get a kettle on, have a nice cup of nettle tea. Cheers. Now is also a great time to get all those pots tidied up and cleared out for the new season. I just use a stiff paintbrush just to give them a good clean round. Just get the worst of the muck and mess out of them. Now you can go to the trouble of actually washing these off in J's fluid or washing up liquid and giving them a proper good old clean. I've never found that to be an issue. Obviously if you've had any diseases amongst your plants, it's a good idea to disinfect them all. But generally speaking, if you just get your pot, give it a good brush round, get all the loose soil out, and then store them all up ready for the new year. And also, while you're looking at your pots, save any of your old yogurt pots or even old bottles where you can just cut the bottom off the bottles to give you some pots for free. Don't chuck these out with the recycling, they're useful for being in pots. And then come the new season, we'll have all our pots ready, all our trays cleaned and ready for the new season. So get your pots cleaned now while you've got time, so that come the new season, you'll be ready to plant up. So that's a list of my 20 jobs that I'll be doing over the winter. Hopefully there's a few in there that maybe you haven't thought of, or have given you inspiration for actually getting stuff done over the winter, rather than just letting everything sit and having to do all your work back in spring. We'll be posting videos throughout the time, doing all those different jobs, everything from making up new furniture to keeping on top of the beds, and also there'll be plenty of new videos about the new plot as we get this polytunnel finished off and get all the guttering on that polytunnel, and how to get guttering on a polytunnel that hasn't got a side rail. So if you want to see those, don't forget to subscribe. But until next time, make sure you wake up in the spring a happy bear, not a grizzly one. Catch you later.